Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Art Side of Life, where it's all about how you can turn your creative passion into a profession. My name is Eva, and my guest today is highly accomplished and awarded animation designer and director, originally from Wyoming, US, now living and working in Thailand. He was mentored by legendary animation designer Jules Engel and the Oscar-winning team of Chuck Jones and Maurice Noble. He is known for his work on Howl, The Secret of Kells, and The Book of Life. I met him while working at Lego, where he ran week-long workshop about character design and animation. Currently, he is a creative director for Cartoon Saloon Animation Studio in Ireland, and he's busy creating new personal short film projects through his own studio, Prodigal Pictures, in Thailand. So please welcome Tod Polson. Let's jump to the interview. If you always knew that you wanted to be a designer or being in creative field when you were a child?
I think so. I think, I started drawing actually really young. Like my mom still has, and I think most artists are this way, drawings from when I was like 2 or 3 years old stuck up on the refrigerator. And so I was always really encouraged. My dad was a rancher and he wasn't so sure about it. Until after he could see that I could actually make a living, and I was in my 20s, and he finally said, "Son, I'm proud of you." But it took a long time to get there. But they always supported me, and I was lucky to have great teachers. I was in 4-H. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah,
it's basically. Were you in 4-H too?
No, but it's nice if you can explain it to people who don't know.
Okay. Yeah, 4-H is just an organization that gives opportunities for kids to learn different things. So I learned woodworking. I had a great teacher named Kathy Hamblin. I must have been like 8 years old or something. I don't know. But she taught me watercolor and pen and ink and all these different things. And then when I got into middle school, I had another great teacher, Tara Taylor, and Dennis Freeman when I was in high school. And he's probably one of the best cartoonists I know still. And it just happened to be in this little town in Wyoming. At that time, it had about 800 people in it. So
that's amazing.
There wasn't much else to do. Raise cattle and draw. So
so you went for the drawing.
That's right.
Yeah, and so if you can mention like the biggest turning points or the biggest decisions kind of which led you where you are now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just following my instincts, and a lot of times my instincts, I question if they've been right or wrong. When I was I think on my 30th birthday, I kind of looked back and I said, where have I gone in my life? And I honestly couldn't remember my 20s. It was all a big blur of like studios and late nights and overtime and weekends and freelance projects. And I was like, I don't want to live like that. So my mentor, Maurice Noble, and we were going to make a short film, and we were invited to go to Thailand to make the film, and then he passed away. So I decided to go over for 6 months to make the film, and then that 6 months ended up being about 12 years. So, and some of my friends in the industry in LA were like, you're throwing your career away. How brave of you! And I was like,
thank you.
No, it's just, I just wanted to try some different things. That's why I like the Cartoon Saloon, and I work a lot with Jorge Gutierrez. They're just doing really quirky, kind of different projects with a lot of heart, and those are the things that kind of keep me motivated. So.
Yeah, because I met Jorge like just really briefly on CTN last year. And he seems like such a funny guy and always in a good mood. So I can see totally how it can be translated in the movies as well.
That's exactly right. Well, that's because his films are so sincere. And the same is true of Tom Moore, who directed The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea. That's really them up on the screen. And so, and like Jorge is a huge personality, and his films are that way too. And those are the kind of people that attract me to work with. And
Yeah, because then you also work on the story, I guess, when you work on the movie, right? And then that's kind of translated into the whole look and feel of the movie.
that's right. Well, I'm more sometimes in the story, but mostly in the they have me come in. They say, "What do you think this looks like?" So I'll do some visual development, and a lot of times that will help guide the story. So they'll see something, they go, "Oh, that's a great idea. Why don't we work that back into the movie or the TV show or whatever we're working on?" And vice versa as well. So we really bounce off of one another, the visual side and the writing side, and and here in Thailand, I do a lot of the writing as well. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
And if you like imagine, because you work with so many people, so many mentors, and also many inspiring people, what would be the best advice you ever received and worst advice, maybe?
The worst advice and the best advice. Well, my my the biggest influence in my life has been probably Maurice Noble, and he was Chuck Jones' art director. So I was just about a year out of school, and he invited me to come work with him. And I I didn't want to work on cartoons. I was trying to get into the experimental animation program at CalArts. I kept getting rejected. So I got into the character animation program, and I'm glad I did because it taught me how to animate and storytelling and things like that. But so I didn't want to do that. But the reason Maurice hired me is because there were no cartoons in my portfolio. He saw these like designs inspired by woodcut artists of the 1930s, like Rockwell Kent and Lynd Ward. And little did I know those were the things that he was looking at when he was a young man.
Ah,
So,
okay.
so he says, I don't want another tree that's, that looks like something I've designed. I want someone, he wanted someone that was interested in other things besides cartoons. So his mother gave him a piece of advice that he gave me, and I still have it here. And I'll read it from the book, The Noble Approach. It's called The Greatest Asset an Artist Can Have is a Curious Mind and the Courage to Explore It.
Yeah, yeah.
So the greatest asset an artist can have is a curious mind and the courage to explore it. And I didn't know what that meant for a long time. The curious mind part is easy. You know, being and having, if I don't know if you have kids or not, but kids
Not
are,
yet.
yeah, they're, they'll tear apart your watch, they destroy everything because they want to know how it works, right?
Yeah.
And Maurice was that way even at 90 years old. So that was really inspiring. But the second part, the courage to explore it, that's more difficult because it's just like with Jorge and Tom. The reason why they're successful is because they're brave enough to put themselves up on the screen. They're and Pete Docter told me something once. He says, if you can show something vulnerable about yourself on the screen and in your characters, the audience is going to relate to that. And so Maurice was the same way through his art. That was his personality up on the screen. So for me, I try to hide behind layers of design or trying to like gags, and it's hard sometimes just to be yourself up in a story or in a design. And I think I'm getting better at it, but it's still a challenge. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because you will always have people who love it, and also internet trolls or whatever kind of criticizing, and then maybe they can point out things you already know and you don't want other people to see, and then if they actually say it, then it can get
that's right.
stressful. But it kind of gets better because then you are a better artist or
Yeah,
creator
that's
when you
right.
do this, right?
I think that's one of the things we forget in the animation industry, that we're artists who happen to do animation, right? Uh, it is a business, and I think sometimes that overshadows the artistry. And I think I think there's a lot of exciting things happening now all over the world. I mean, the technology is so cheap that there's all these interesting projects coming out, 2D and 3D. I mean, more than ever before. So I think that's very exciting.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see like also all new projects what you will come up with.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because I read somewhere that you would like to do the Noble approach as a cartoon series, right?
Yeah, I'm interested in doing it. The idea is to take some of Maurice's best cartoons and then break them down and have different people that he trained kind of explain certain aspects of what he was doing. Because when Maurice was designing a film, he was involved. He was involved in story. He was involved in the whole process. And all those guys were really. They really
Yeah.
bounced off of each other. So I think it would be really interesting and educational to people to break down those cartoons and talk about what was going on, what they were thinking,
Yeah.
the process, the timing, what they were. The problem is that Warner Brothers really doesn't want people to have these things and see these things.
Okay.
It's a strict thing. So for just the book itself took me 8 years to get the rights to the images.
Wow.
So I would call them up every few months. Can I use? And then they'd say, "We'll get back to you." And it took 8 years.
Oh my
So
God.
they
Wow.
thought I would give up, but they did, I told him, I said, I promised Maurice on his deathbed that I would finish this book for him. He was in the hospital, and he said, I want you to do two things for me. Finish our film, that was the Pumpkin of Nifar, and finish my book, because I think it's important that people get this information, that it doesn't leave with my generation. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but yeah, you made it, so
yeah,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
by the grace of God.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And when you're working on the new projects, which are the new projects you're excited about now, or something what you're working on now, or something upcoming?
Well, right now it's a pretty exciting time. I'm working on well, for the Cartoon Saloon, I'm helping develop a project based on the life of Jane Goodall. And there was this book written by Patrick McDonald. I got it right here. We're working on it now.
Ah, cool.
So it's about her childhood and how basically some of the things that came in that made her who she would become and who she is. So that's a very exciting project. We're just doing the development right now. We're putting together a trailer and the script with a young writer, and playing around with designs. And so it's and the message is a great one. Conservation and getting kids out of the TV room and into the backyard, exploring things. And then the other project I'm working on now, I've got a few things, but I'm working on a short called The Prodigal Son. It's
Okay.
based on the Bible story, but I'm doing a really different take on it. I'm not going to give it away now, but it's only 5 minutes, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people. It's a drama, and most of my shorts up to this point have been comedies. So for
Yes.
me, it's a lot of fun to try something else out and stretch my wings a little bit. So
And
that's
so,
exciting.
yeah, I mean, it sounds really cool. When it will be out? Do you know already?
Well, which project?
The short one?
Oh, the short one. I'm hoping by the end of the year.
Oh, cool,
I
cool.
told I had it's the producer. Anyway, I was supposed to be done in July, and it's going to be probably a few more months, but
Yeah. Because
it's okay.
I saw the short video what you posted on YouTube when you
Okay.
were designing the character. It's super cool to see as well, like how you kind of go around to design the character.
Oh, with the different color
Yes. Yeah.
lights. Oh, okay. I didn't know anyone would actually watch that. So, um,
I was doing my research.
Very good.
And so what I wanted to ask you as well, when you are creating stories or color scripts or everything, do you kind of travel to the places when you want to get the inspiration, or how do you research your inspiration?
If possible, yeah. Um, it's if possible. Like the Secret of Kells was interesting because I'd never been to Ireland before that project.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always imagined Ireland a certain way,
Yeah.
and when I got there, it was a shock to see, it's beautiful. I mean, it's green, but it was raining every day and it was cold. And, I mean, no wonder they drink, right? So, um, no, that's not true. They don't all drink. So,
Not all, yeah.
but the people themselves are so colorful and just it's an amazing crew because we'd go to the pub, sometimes like on Thursdays, and there would be a live band, and then they'd be playing a song, and then half the artist would pull like a flute or an instrument out of their bag, and they would just start playing along and singing. I was like, holy cow! And the guys are like, like Ross Stewart, who's the art director.
Yeah.
He's a gallery painter, but he got kind of stuck in this animation world, and so he's off painting when he has a free moment, and then he's back in the studio making poetry with Tom Moore. So
Yeah. Wow.
interesting. But and like with Jorge's stuff, I had a hard time because I've only been to Tijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So I first worked with Jorge on El Tigre at Nickelodeon, and my colors weren't saturated enough for him. It took a while, and he goes, I want to smell the sweat in the browns, and I want to feel the sun burning in the yellows. That's how he describes it to me. I'm like, wow, okay. So you want everything intense? Yes.
Yeah, you need to have the emotions in the color script, right?
So his stuff is really hard to design because his colors have all the colors of the rainbow. He can make them work. It's more difficult for me to make them all work together. So that was a big challenge. But through the years, I got to know him, and through a lot of research and books and things like that, I was able to finally kind of capture some of the things that he likes and doesn't like. I throw in pink every once in a while just to throw him off because he hates pink.
Okay,
So,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So sometimes I'll throw in a pink building or something like that just to.
So, but
Of course, he hasn't asked me to work again since then.
maybe that's the reason, the pink thing.
Maybe.
And so when you are designing the color scripts or working with the complex backgrounds, how do you go about to simplify the character so he doesn't get lost in the layout? And I know it's a complex question, but maybe if you can describe
Not
it.
really. It's just like the Jorge example. Sometimes the backgrounds were actually really ugly.
So you don't notice.
No, color-wise, because the characters had to read. So, they're the stars. They're the reason you watch the film. So if they don't stand out and people miss the characters, then you haven't done your job. So sometimes, if I'm working with rainbow characters, I'll have to work with really muted or monotone backgrounds sometimes. But, like on The Secret of Kells, the characters themselves were pretty muted. So the backgrounds really had to be the characters were the stars, but it was really integrated more with the background. So, so the backgrounds had to stand out a lot more than they would on something like what Jorge's doing.
Yeah, because it was more the geometric shapes and
That's
Kells
right.
movie, right? So you can work with that, and then on the Book of Life, then it was more the colors variation.
Yeah,
Simplification.
that's right. And in the Book of Life, everything had detail. Like even the eyeballs had like little skulls in them and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. It was challenging, but it was a lot of fun. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I mean, when I saw the movie first time, I was like, wow, so many colors, but it still works. But
It's yeah,
yeah, and did
it's
you
amazing.
work also on the Song of the Sea? Were you involved on that movie as well?
I was just at the beginning, so they were trying to raise money. So we put together a trailer, and I helped a bit with that, just doing some color sketches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and then I looked at the story and I gave some story notes on the first cut of the animatic, and and then I appeared in the film as well. I'm one of the background characters standing by a bus stop.
Oh,
So
okay. I will watch it again.
my claim to fame.
Yeah, that's really cool. You know what? I managed to have a small character in Lego with my name, which is really nice
There
as
you
well.
go. See?
But no one will notice ever when you are not talking about it, you know.
And no
So
one knows. Yeah, my scene is like 12 frames long. So
yeah, but now I will find it. And when you have now so many projects, how do you decide what to say yes and no to? Kind of, how do you
uh,
evaluate?
well, when I was single, it was easier. Uh, because it was my rule at that time after I turned 30 was it has to be really interesting project or it has to be in a really interesting place. It was never really about the money. So
Yeah,
I remember I was invited to go to I think Fiji at one point.
that sounds nice.
There was a Yeah, it would have been great. There was this story about how Santa's elves get upset at Santa, go on strike, and decide to set up their own shop in the South Pole. So on the way down to the South Pole, they get shipwrecked in Fiji or something like that. So I actually, and I don't think it ever happened. They never
Yeah,
called me back. But anyway,
because
that would have been it.
I was wondering how do you combine Santa and Fiji?
I don't know either. But if you get to spend the weekends on the beach, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so and now because now you have a son, right?
Yes.
And
Hmm.
he is
And
really young,
yeah, he's three
as
years
I.
old. Yeah.
So how do you design your day, and how do you combine your family life and the work balance? Like, do you plan
Uh,
ahead?
yeah, it's challenging. The last 2 days, it's been a holiday here, so it's he's been going to school to preschool, and that's made things a lot easier.
Yeah.
But the last 2 days, he's uh, so what I've been doing is I go to bed at about 9 o'clock when he goes to bed, and then I get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning
Wow.
and work. Uh, at least try to work anyway. And so that's worked pretty well. But it's always challenging. Yeah,
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 because then you work on the personal project as well, and then you work for
that's
the
right.
studio. Do you schedule it like day by day or week by week, or how do you split the project?
It's just like when I like for right now, I have the two projects. So when we have deadlines set up for Me Jane. That's the name of the saloon project. So we'll have certain deadlines, and I know that these days I'll have to really focus. With Mark Oftedal is the director on that. I'm just creative director, so his load is a lot heavier than mine. But and then I have certain deadlines that I have for uh, the Prodigal Son project. But that's also why it's not done because this other thing kicked in before I could finish it, so I've had to put it off, unfortunately. But I want to make it as good as I can. So
Yeah, for sure. And is there like a tool or software you maybe bought which simplifies your life in this, maybe in the planning or something you work with?
uh no, but it's a good question because it's something I was talking about with Mark earlier today because he's using something called Trello.
I'm using that as well.
Yeah. And he recommended it for me too because, I have little sticky notes and things and stuff on my calendar and stuff. And if I have more than two projects, I'm just done. So So I'm going to try that. And then we're playing with something called Artella and then Sync Sketch. And those are just because we're working remotely so often, just coming up with ways that we can, share artwork and sketch on each other's artwork and things like that. And, and we've been using Shotgun a lot. Like at Saloon, we use Shotgun. And that's been great because I can just type up my notes and then send artwork and talk to the artist directly. It's been really good. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because if you work with so many artists as well, and if someone would want to do what you do now and or get where you are now, what do you like? What would you advise them to have in portfolio or where to start with?
Well, I think just I know this sounds kind of cliche, but just follow your heart, and what I mean by that is just the things that interest you. If you put those into your portfolio, that's gonna get you into the kinds of projects that you want to get into eventually. It's like this thing with Mark, with this Jane Goodall. Mark's the reason Mark is living in Thailand is because he's so involved with animal conservation here, and he's helped. Gosh, he and his wife Yi both have helped with a lot of different animals and things like that. But he actually wanted to become a biologist, and he got stuck in animation. And he's just an amazing animator and storyteller. So this project he's mixing his loves is perfect for him. So those kind of projects don't come along very often, but when they do, you can make something really, really special. That's where the art part comes in. So I just get a little frustrated, even at animation workshop where people, the artist of the year, there'll be it's like flavor of the month at Baskin Robbins, but there'll be someone that everyone really loves. So all their work looks like that, and maybe I'm guilty of that too, but. I try to get them to look at other things as well. So I think it's easier with the internet now because there's just so much out there, and often they're showing me new artists as well, which are fantastic. So that's the other benefit of teaching, I guess. So.
That's true. And from studying and teaching, do you have some books which you recommend?
Well, the Noble Approach is a great, and I think, not to talk it up, but I think people think it's about Maurice's design work, and it is, but mostly it's about how you can approach any type of design, for any kind of project, and put yourself into it. So a lot of these things I've been talking about are things that Maurice passed down onto me. And I really love the Preston Blair book, Cartoon Animation. It's still a great one. The Richard Williams book, which I can't think of the name of right now.
But we can put it in the show notes at the end, so you can send it to me, and we found it, and then people can just check it out through link.
The animators work, but it's a good one as well. So. And more than that is just, I think, just read a lot of different types of things. Like I'm really into biographies and things like that, and that really inspires my work a lot. And I think all these different things, whatever book you're reading is going to feed into this system, and it'll make you a better storyteller. So I think a variety of things is best. Not just about animation, but just about everything. So I don't know if that answers you were talking more about animation type books.
Also, it doesn't have to be animation type book. It's more like when you have a book which you would give as a present, something what you really believe in, as you said, like this is something people should read because it influences you.
Yeah, for my classes, I use the Noble approach as a textbook. That's one of the
Mm-hmm.
the nice things about it. So, but yeah, and
So, and what keeps you motivated? Because when you have now so many projects as well, I guess it's easier as well to jump from project to project. Maybe that can be a motivation. Or do you go to nature or something which kind of keeps you
uh,
from procrastination?
well, I actually try to keep two projects always going at the same time on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
because when I get stuck on one, or I feel like I've taken it to a certain place where I need to think about it more, then I
Mm-hmm.
can jump onto the other thing. So that's, I mean, and that project sometimes is a film project, sometimes is a book project.
Mm-hmm.
Just different types of creative things, and I think that really helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I like to do it as well because some people like to keep only one project, but for
It,
me, I like to do even just more illustrations and more projects at the same time as well.
it it takes longer, but I think the results are better. You know,
Yeah.
I I don't know if maybe some people look at my personal films and go, well, I don't know what he's talking about, but
No, I'm sure not. Definitely not. And can you share also like a worst career moment and what you learned from it?
worst career moment. Well, there was a time, just a few years ago, actually. When I moved back to the U.S. for a while and moved back to Wyoming, and then suddenly I didn't have work for, gosh, a year
Wow.
almost. It's just like trickles of freelance and things like that, and living in my parents' house, which was great. But yeah, just suddenly there was just no work, and I really questioned, my own abilities. Am I growing as an artist? Am I, uh, you know? So that was a hard time, and luckily my wife is very understanding, and she's also a very talented artist. So she pushes me pretty
That's
hard,
good.
yeah, that was a hard moment. And also when Maurice died, that was also a very difficult moment, because we'd had so many plans together, and when he died, he was 91, I think. So, he promised me he would live to 100. So, and I believed him, So,
Yeah, yeah.
it wasn't his fault that he passed on, but he was just so youthful. So when he passed away, it was like a void. I was like, oh,
What now?
now now I have to make the decisions about where I'm going to go with my career,
Yeah.
and so that's when I came to Thailand. It was
Hmm.
all about that same time. Yeah,
So, what do you think would be like a key takeaway from these stories for a young artist?
I think just keep going, and I think, and this is something that teachers say all the time, but finish your projects, whether it's a book, whether it's a film, a personal film. I think it's important to finish those things, because of, actually, at the end of every project, I think you're going to hate it, because you've grown so much as an artist through the arc. Even if it takes a year or 2 years, you've
Yeah.
grown. You're a much better artist than you were in the beginning. So you look back, but you got to finish it. Then you have something. That's your art.
Yeah,
Just
for
keep
sure.
going.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really good advice because sometimes people are just scared to continue because they don't see the improvement right away. And yeah, they can
Well,
quit.
and what I usually see it in a lot of young people's, well, and older people's work too, but
Hmm.
they'll be working on a project, and it'll look great, and then they'll say, oh, but I could design it a little bit differently, and it would look better. So they go to the beginning again, and then they just go, oh, I could rework the story, and they do go to and so
Oh.
it's like, 20 years go by, and I've got a few projects that I'm guilty of that too, actually, but uh, it's, I think, just get it as good as you can, and then stick with it, and finish it, and then
Yeah.
knowing that you're going to learn. Like my last film, I don't like it very much actually, but it was the Escape of the Gingerbread Man was my last like personal project. And that
Yeah.
was a few years ago, but I learned more from that project than any of the others, because I'd never really worked in 3CG that way before.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so for growth wise, it was the best film for me. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so you developed in that sense.
that's right.
Ah, that's really cool. And so is there something you wish you knew before you started your career?
Yeah, I think that I got bumped up too quickly. I don't know if that makes any sense. I started directing when I was still in college. Like I won a contest for Disney
Yeah, yeah.
to do bumpers for a TV show called Home Improvement, and then I was directing things for Sesame Street. Like when I was still in college, and so I didn't have to go through the steps.
Yeah.
And so I think I missed a lot of stuff technically that I could have been a lot better at now. Um, and also, I wish I had focused because I was going to be an animator in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone just hired me to be a designer. So I wish that I had focused more on like illustration and things like that as well. But those are things that you pick up along the way, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And
you never know.
yeah, that's true. And how is then the focus shifting when you are like designing color scripts and you work as a designer, and then when you work as a art director? What is the focus different, or you work kind of the same way?
It's kind of the same. The biggest difference is that when I work with, it's always a difficult balance whether you're directing or art directing. Is that you want to bring the best out of the people you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
You really want, because obviously they have heart and talent, and but you want them to do the things your way too, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
so getting that balance is difficult, and that's why teamwork is so good. And if you can work with the same people from project to project, you get to gain that trust and things like that. But I've found that if you can inspire people to give the best of themselves and help them to feel creative and help them to get the project, you're going to get much better work than if you had just like, dictated every note in the song. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And how do you then find people which fits the kind of the vision or the brand you are trying to communicate?
it's again difficult sometimes. A lot of it's interesting. A lot of the people almost all the people that I get hired by are people that I went to school with. so we went through that process, and then more recently, the people I get hired by were students of mine, like from the workshop. So
Yeah, okay.
it's interesting. So we built relationships before we had a working relationship. So a lot of times I'll have students over there, and this year we're having I think 5 interns from the
Mm-hmm.
workshop come to Thailand, and they're going to be helping us on a couple of our projects and things like that. So some of them I think will be a really good fit, and some of them I'm not so sure, but there's some potential there. So we'll just see where it goes and,
Yeah, so
give them a chance,
yeah, yeah, definitely. Because then you build like networking, and then you see maybe you can like join forces with someone for one project, and then with others for a different
Yeah, for
project.
sure. Yeah,
Ah,
for sure.
yeah. So that's really cool. And we didn't talk about your brand and the vision and mission through
My
your work.
brand.
Yeah. How do you kind of position yourself on the market, or what is the vision you are always communicating through your work?
Well, well, it's interesting. I've never seen my work as a brand, or I did when I was younger because we were trying to market the Noble Tales, which is um, and I've had some series and things I've tried to pitch and do things like that. But um, I've That's a good question. It's never been that important to me
Mm-hmm.
to be seen as a brand, and I know that in illustration or design, they say just set a style and go with it. Um, but I've never really thought about that, and maybe I'd be a lot more successful if I had. I don't know.
Oh yeah, because I was always thinking like as well when you have business and marketing, and also when you are artist, you are kind of promoting yourself, and
Right,
I was wondering like kind of the vision, what you have when you are creating your artworks.
right. I don't really have an. I know it sounds like a dumb career statement, but I don't have a grand overall plan. I just want to make. There's a couple of films that I really want to make.
Mm-hmm.
Like heart projects, and this prodigal son projects is one of those, and the Jane Goodall project is one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm in a really good place where I'm getting to do the things the type of projects that I want to be doing, um, but I don't think I worked my way to get there. It just sort of I just did the things I always loved, and they just sort of fell into place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
yeah, that totally makes sense because if you put your heart in the projects, then it reflects on every project you work on.
right. Jorge told me something very interesting though. He said because he works a lot with Guillermo del Toro, and Jorge was saying something about Jorge. Anyway, I won't go into the details of it, but he said because Guillermo had made his first feature and he felt it was really good,
Hmm.
but no one went to go see it because no one knew about it. So
Okay.
that's when Guillermo knew that it was as important to market yourself, to brand yourself. And so I think Jorge has learned a lot from that, and I think that's exactly what he's doing. He's amazing how he puts himself out there. I don't have the energy to do that, I think. But the thing is he's getting to do the kind of projects that he wants to do, but he had to spend a lot of time, I think, doing projects that he necessarily didn't want to do as well.
Hmm.
So,
And
um,
do you have an agent or assistant or someone who helps you with your project and personal organizing?
my wife, my wife kind of keeps everything flowing, especially when I've got a heavy project going. Um, but no, it's just kind of winging it. And luckily, like at the saloon, we have a really good structure.
Hmm.
On my own stuff, I have a lot of help from my wife,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I have the same from my husband as well. He is helping me with everything, and
well,
so also with this
that's
project.
yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I think you need a partner that understands your needs and the things you want to do and helps you do those things. And she has things that she wants to do too that I'm trying to help her with as well. So
Yeah, yeah, that's really important.
yeah.
And if you think like for the future plans, like where would you see yourself like in 5 to 10 years? And if you would like accomplish everything what you want, all your dreams, what would you be doing?
Well, uh, I think I would just like to keep making films and telling stories. Um, I know that's not very interesting, but I've 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 got so many stories that I'd love to do and take a crack at that I don't think that I'll be able to do them, at least at the speed that I do them. Um, but I'm hoping, we have our little studio. It's called Prodigal Pictures.
Hmm.
Um, that we're able to start, and we just started it really this year. So we've got our first two projects, and we're just trying to get those kind of going. It's a slow start, but I hope in 5 or 10 years that we could just have a small crew, and I could keep working on development stuff with the Saloon and other places, and then continue to make these these shorts and maybe even longer form things that kind of our Zen projects, the things that move us. I
Yeah.
don't want to become an outsourced studio or anything like that. So.
Yeah, and if for your crew or for your team, maybe in the future, would you like to have them working with you or more like remote positions, or how would you imagine that?
Uh, it'd be great to have a small team that you work with every day. I miss that, and that's one of the downsides of working in Thailand is that I have a few friends around, but
Mm-hmm.
like Mark is a 12-hour drive south, and he's in Thailand, and so I miss that sense of community.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go teach or when I go over for meetings in Ireland, I get a little bit of that, but it would be nice to have like 5 or 6 people that you can bounce things off of all the time, and then bring in friends. One of the great things about Thailand is in the middle of winter, you can invite someone over from Europe, and they're going to come, or
For sure.
America, and they're going to come over for a month, and no problem. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. If you want to come skiing, to Switzerland, you can come here and we can go to Thailand. I have no problem with that.
there you go. I
So,
love Switzerland. Actually, it's beautiful. So,
so yeah, but
yeah.
that's true that yeah, you can definitely like get people to Thailand in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I have people calling all the time saying, "Hey, you guys got a job? I need it." They want to come over for a bit. So
yes, yeah. So maybe you
yeah,
can create your project only during the winter time.
there you go. That's a good idea.
So you will have so many people working on it. And last question I would like to ask is about the future as well. And like,
Okay.
if you think about it, what would you like to be remembered for in 100 years?
Remembered for
Mm.
um, in 100 years. Well, if anyone does remember me, I'd like it to be stories that I told some stories that touch people's hearts, touch people's lives, that made them think a little bit, made them laugh a little bit. Um, and if I could do that, then that would be pretty big, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So because a lot of these films are forgotten, and books and different things. So, um, but that would be nice.
Yeah, yeah, because I think people will definitely remember more things when they can think about it or if there is some emotional connection for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because the thing is right now there's a lot of content. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff being made. In 100 years, if we're here at all, anyone on the planet, but there's going to be a lot more people, a lot more stuff. So uh, you know,
Nice.
like the computer stuff that's cutting edge now, in 10 years, is going to look old fashioned, I think. So, um, but the stories that have heart, like Toy Story, still is a great film because it has heart. It touches something in you, and
Mm-hmm.
so those are the types of stories I'm interested in even in my little short things. That's difficult. That's difficult to pull that off. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, but congrats to your work. I really agree. I mean, it's amazing, and I think you influence a lot of people with your creations.
well, thank you. Yeah,
So,
that's nice.
yeah. So, thank you so much for being
Yeah,
here and taking time from your busy schedule.
sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, and then thanks for remembering me. That's been quite a few years. So,
Yeah, but I mean, it was amazing. I mean, when we met in Lego and the workshop was so good that I really enjoyed it. And it was one of the first workshops that I actually enjoyed. So thank you so much for doing it.
oh, that's great. That's awesome.
And do you have some last parting piece of advice for young people?
Uh, well, I think I've said pretty much everything that I'd like to say, but I I guess just if I had to say anything, would just be to repeat. I think just to try to find balance in your life. Um, Look at things outside of animation for inspiration and art, music, travel, and travel's a huge thing. Do all these things because taking time off from your art is actually going to make you a better artist.
Yeah.
I really believe that. So
good. Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you guys for joining, and don't forget to inspire each other and help each other to succeed. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.